Good afternoon. Marsha, how are you? Good, good. So today we unfolded a comprehensive overview plan of how we're going to deal with gun violence and violence in the city. And throughout not only my time as a lawmaker, but those who followed me on the campaign trail, you heard me often talk about my journals of documenting the complete failure of how we are rowing in different directions and dealing with gun violence in this city. And it really crystallized to me over the weekend when I sat down with anti-gun crisis management groups. One young lady who was there, she shared with me when she reaches out to the Department of Sanitation to ask them to pick up the garbage where drug dealers and gangs are hiding guns and drugs, there's no one to talk to. There's no one to respond to our Marines. They are the Marines. They're on the ground. The police officers, CMS, they are our Marines. Imagine the Marines calling for assistance and they can't get it. Because we have siloed our city. Health and Hospital must understand that they're part of the gun crisis solution. When someone is shot and they go to a hospital, crisis management team should have a room there so they can prevent the retaliatory shootings, which are a large number of shootings. But oftentimes they can't get inside to do that. We need to connect the men and women who are part of our workforce development. When crisis management members are out there telling a gangbanger to get out of the gang, they should also have a job application. We need to connect the chancellor and his team to when people need high school equivalency or some type of educational opportunity, they should be there. It's a disconnection, and everyone believes that the gang and crime crisis is the NYPD's problem. No, it is not. Every agency in this city must be involved with the #1 threat in our city, and that's violence. But as I stated earlier, and I will continue to state, NYPD is doing its job. Thousands of guns are being removed from the streets of the city of New York. Thousands. Since being elected, over 300 guns were removed off our streets. But it appears as though for every one we take off the street, 5 find its way back on the street. We need help. And the federal government must step in. But while we're asking for that help, we're not going to stop doing what we do every day. That Officer Rivera Mora did, and the 5 officers that were shot. And so this is the battle we're facing. But I want it to be extremely clear. I'm ready for the battle. I'm ready for the battle. And my life experience has prepared me for this moment to go into the crevices of these neighborhoods that have historically never saw relief. Although we became safer as a city, trust me, there are neighborhoods that never saw the relief. And I'm going to go and find those neighborhoods. We have 30 precincts in this city that they contribute to 80% of the violence out of 30 precincts. The resources need to be there. That's what we're going to do. This is a pivotal moment for our city. And my team is focused on this issue. Focused on the challenge that's in front of us. And the right leadership, this can be a safe city. I answer any questions.
Marsha?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed in your blueprint for ending the gun violence, you talk about appointing judges who are willing to put people who have gun crimes in jail, or at least give them denied bail. I wonder how many of these judges do you think you can appoint over the next 4 years of your term? who are not doing it, will you try to get rid of them?
And that's a great question. And this is part of the reform we must do, Marcia, in this dysfunctional city that we're living in. I had to reappoint judges on the 31st of December. No opportunity to do an analysis, no opportunity to sit down and speak with them and find out their vision. We had this small window to reappoint judges. Any new incoming mayor should not be faced with that on December 31st on an extremely crucial decision. And so the team will do an analysis of how many judges will be open to, we could appoint in the next 4 years. But I'm going to be clear, you cannot bring on the bench your philosophy and your theory. You must bring on the bench keeping this city safe. That's the goal. And whatever powers we have to ensure that we keep our bench staffed with the right judges that are going to have the right balance of justice and safety, we're going to target.
Do you think that certain civil rights groups and others will try to oppose your efforts to carve a judiciary that you can bend to your will?
Well, I think that civil rights groups, and I was a member of a civil rights group, I think that civil rights groups, they have their job, I have my job. My job, I'm responsible for the safety of the city, and the charter gives me the authority to pick judges based on the overall concept of safety and justice. We're not looking to be heavy-handed, but we're not looking to be dangerous to our city. And I'm going to find and strike that right balance.
Mayor, on the new plainclothes unit, you mentioned learning mistakes from the past. I'm curious what, in your view, those mistakes are and how they are being rectified in this new unit.
I know those mistakes so well. I was on the ground when Amadou Diallo was shot at 44 times. I was there when Zongo was shot. I'm aware of the mistakes, and I've documented them throughout my journals on what we need to do differently while I was in the department and when I retired. Number one, we have video technology. If you would speak to the DAs, they'll tell you too many cases are coming before them where the cameras are turned off. Not acceptable. If we want to rebuild trust in the police department and the civilians, we need to make sure that we document what we are doing. So if I find an officer that is in a plainclothes anti-gun unit and they are turning off their cameras, I'm going to make sure that supervisor is reviewing the information and tying that to the cases that we have, because we're not going to abuse the rights of New Yorkers. Second, the dress code. You are in plain clothes, you hop out the car, you come at someone quickly. In many communities, that is a sign that you're about to be attacked. And that has created a lot of hostility. So we're going to make sure that the version of plainclothes officers will have modified police attire that they are quickly identified as police officers. And then the right officers assigned. You know, you must have the right training, the right mindset, the right disposition, and be, as I say all the time, emotionally intelligent enough that you are getting ready to engage in someone on the street. And so we're going to make sure the 400 plus people that are in the pipeline to go into our new unit is going to make sure that they're the best fit for the unit.
Mr. Mayor, how do you...
I'm not going to forget you, Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you talk about this change you want to make to the state's raising age law with 16 and 17-year-olds? It's my understanding that judges already have the discretion to refer a case to criminal court for some youth offenders. Can you address that part of it? But can you also talk about the other potential risks that young people will be facing if they're being asked to cooperate with law enforcement and they can't do so because of whatever circumstances they may be involved in, the risk that they may be potentially placed in as well?
So, and the fact that you asked that question, I was surprised also. For murder is one thing. There's a couple of parts of raise the age we must look at, and it came from my interview and my conversation with judges. Number one, we have to stop this mindset that if the young person is carrying a gun but is not in public view. So we had a case where a young man shot off a gun inside his house, but it was not in public view, so they only could send him to family court. But another case where he's walking down the block, same young man, walking down the block with a gun, shoots himself in the leg. It was never in public view, family court. Eventually, he harmed someone because of those different encounters. So we have to get away from this mindset that if it's not in public view, then you're not going to charge them in Supreme Court. Guns, if you want to charge someone for other crimes in family court, I could live with that. Guns, we draw the line. Now, here's what's really interesting, Gloria. If you pass crack cocaine to someone, the crime is different than if you pass a gun to someone. This is not making any sense. And so the goal is to say that if you are caught with a gun in this city, you are going to go to criminal court. You're not going to family court. And if you're a repeated offender, even if you sit down and cooperate with the police department, if you're a repeated offender, you go to criminal court.
Mayor, what about you've often talked about being able to do intervention, but also prevention. What about the fact that these are young people who are going to be put through the criminal court system at a very young age, at a very young, early point in their lives, and that everything we've seen is we know that people going into the system at an early age sets them up to stay in that system. So how are you going to address that part of it, young people going through the criminal court system?
And the reason it sets them up for failure because it's a broken system. So we want to partner not only with Rikers, which is under my control, but also redefine the criminal justice system, our state prisons. We need to redefine those state prisons. We took out education, we took out trades, we took out the skills that they need. We created a revolving door. And so let's turn these correctional facilities in a place to correct and give people the service they need, mental health services and other services. As I stated, a large portion of the young people you're talking about age out of foster care. And so the goal is not to do what we did with the Rockefeller drug law. Mind you, I was a co-sponsor of the bill that repealed the Rockefeller drug law. We're not going to those days. But those who are exhibiting a level of danger on our streets that are hurting innocent people, we must remove them until they get the support and services they need. And if it means that after they get to a certain hurdle that we're able to seal records, let's do that. Let's let the legislators focus on that. But you can't continue to send the signal. This is the signal on the streets right now. It's all right to carry a gun.
Mr. Mayor,
Hold on, folks, right here.
Yes.
Yes.
You talked about training this plainclothes unit and selecting the right people. So what's your timetable for this, and when would they actually start operating in the precincts that you want them in?
First, let's understand, we already have a team out there now, and many of you remember when the previous administration disbanded the plainclothes unit in the precincts on the campaign trail. I made it clear that was the wrong thing to do, that we should not have done that because you need the element of surprise when you're policing. And in August, they heard me. They put in place a unit with an unmarked vehicle that they have been playing a major role in removing guns off our streets. And so we still have that unit in place, and they're doing a great job, a heroic job in doing that. While that unit is in place, we're going to now, in a 3 weeks period of time, probably sooner, but in 3 weeks period of time, at a maximum, we're going to put in this new unit that is going to be in a modified version of plainclothes.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of...
Hold on. Lisa, I'm not going to forget you, trust me, but let's follow the flow.
Hi.
How are you, Sally?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I was wondering, how do you plan to convince legislative leaders in Albany to make these changes to raise the age to bail, to address the concerns that you've raised? And also, just one very quick question, do you have a total cost of this plan?
Okay, first let's get with the lawmakers in Albany. I cannot make decisions for the lawmakers. We have, different levels of government, and I respect that. I'm going to share with them the numbers. Soon as we did raise the age, go look at the numbers. Look how fast the gun crimes went up with our children. Those of us who are old enough to remember drug dealers that sold heroin and crack cocaine, when the laws stated that you would treat children differently, the drug dealers would give the drugs to the children. Right now, when you stop someone in a car with a gun, that 14, 15, 16 years old, he raises his hand, he said, "It's my gun. No one in this car knows anything about it. It's my gun." Because the bad guys know, give it to the children. They're going to family court, and they're not going to have a hard penalty. They are using these children. And the law, for all its good intention, it is allowing these bad people to use these children the same way we saw back to how they use them for heroin and crack cocaine. So I'm going to show them the numbers. I'm going to show them the data, and I'm going to do the best I can to convince them. And I believe the shooting of these amazing officers this last week is going to send a real message, just as when Officer Burns was shot, sent a strong message. When Wenjen Liu and Ramos was shot, it sent a strong message. This is a window of opportunity to say, let's get this right. I know what they were trying to do because I fought for what they were trying to do, but we can't do it at the expense of 11-month-old babies being shot in our streets.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned coordinating with the state troopers and the Port Authority police for checks of people coming into, traffickers in particular, coming in across the bridges and the tunnels, the buses and the train stations. How soon would you be able, do you think, to implement something like that?
Well, you know, when you think about it, Lisa, right now you can get on a Greyhound and carry anything you want into the city. You know, there are no spot checks. You don't have to check every person that comes through, just as we do in the subway system. Right now in the subway system, we have random bag checks. Just as we do that in the subway system, we need to do that at the Port Authority. We need to do that at Amtrak. The technology is there where people can put their bags, every 10th person, every 8th person can put their bag through the scanner to see what's in it. It sends the message that you're not just going to come into the city. I communicated with the governor's people, and she's open to coordinate this with us. It's imperative that we get the assistance of the governor. I'm going to reach out to Governor Murphy in New Jersey and get him on board as well, so we can send a strong message that you're just not going to openly carry guns into our city.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I'm not here. I was looking for a staff.
My bad.
I'm sorry. Do me a favor. Get that photo of the gun that was carried. You have it? It's in office, yes.
I was wondering if, to follow up.
I'm sorry, you also asked the cost on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the cost on this, that's important. What I'm finding is that we just have too much waste. And I have been spending my evenings going through the budgets, going through how much we're spending. The waste in city government is just unbelievable. You know, I said last week, you know, we're not deploying our manpower. I don't know who in the Post showed the story of at one train station, we had 8 police officers standing there. Who are they protecting, themselves? And so, you know, we are not using taxpayers' dollars correctly. And so the money is there. Without having to increase our budget, it's the better deployment of city resources. That's why I'm telling all the agencies, you're giving me a 3% PAG. You know, we need to be spending taxpayers' dollars better. And if we do that, then we will have money for the resources we need. And that is what I believe, what I've been looking at and viewing in the evenings, looking at these budgets, we can do a better job with taxpayers' dollars. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, to follow up on Sally's point, when you talk about strengthening the gun suppression unit at the NYPD, what does that mean? Are we talking more cops? Are we talking more overtime? Are we talking, what do you mean by strengthening it in this case?
Great question. More manpower. We have about 60 detectives there now. The police commissioner is doing an analysis, so how do we get more detectives there? Because the role they're playing is amazing, going after gangs, going after guns, going after those who are contributing to the violence in the city. And if you look at the plan right now, I was very clear to the police commissioner that we're going into all of these agencies and we're looking at who's assigned there. And if you're assigned there and there's no reason for you to be there as a police officer, I need you to be in crime fighting. And that means making sure we get the the manpower in these units by making sure that people are doing law enforcement duties and not clerical duties.
60 to 100 or to 200 or 100?
The police commissioner would do that analysis and tell us how many. No, go, let Nolan, because if you don't, he's going to complain to me. Go ahead, Nolan.
You described a scenario where for every gun the police department gets off the street, there are another 5 that make their way back into the city. How much confidence do you have in this plan stopping Niagara Falls? Can you tell the public, can you tell your cops that this is going to be what turns the 2-year tsunami of gun violence?
Right, and you know what, Nolan, I wish I could. I wish I could. What I'm going to tell to my cops and to the city of New York, we are going to do our job. My agencies are going to do their job and stop feeding crises. My police department, they're doing their job. These police officers are saying, we need help. That's what they're saying. They're saying we need help to stop the flow. We need help to stop putting people back on the street that are dangerous. They're saying we need help. I mean, what we have done to these police officers in this city, where we, from pouring water on their heads to not giving them the authority to do the job, saying we're not going to prosecute fare evasions, allowing people to walk into stores and take whatever they want off the shelves, and then we point to the police officers and say, keep us safe. They're saying we need help. And so what I'm saying to them, I don't have the authority to tell Washington what to do. I don't have the authority to tell the state what to do. I'm going to plead with them and speak with them, but I'm telling them in this city, they're going to get the help from their mayor.
Hi, Mayor. A new mayor usually gets one big ask in Albany. So is this your ask between raise the age and bail reform? And do you think Governor Hochul could be a partner with you on this?
Yes, I have a lot to ask. You know, this city, we're the financial engine for this entire state, if not the country. And I think that we should be given a little bit more love. And so I have a lot to ask, and one of them is, let's go back. I don't want to take away from the work that they've done around Raise the Age. I just want them to look at the data. And if we really want to save these children, we should not have them put into place. We lost a generation of children to drug dealers during the 70s and the mid-60s. That's going to happen again if we don't get this right. And so my ask is to relook at Raise the Age. My ask is to allow judges to use imminent danger. We're at 49 states currently use that. So we need to make sure we look at these laws, let's tweak them to get the mission we were trying to accomplish, a mission that I fought for, but at the same time, we have to keep our city safe, and we're not doing that right now.
Governor Hochul, could she be a partner on that?
I believe Governor Hochul is an amazing partner. She gets it. She has to make the determination from her team on what she's going to use to push forward, but I think she understands that we're at a real crossroad on safety in the city.
Hello, Mayor. Over here.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I want to turn the focus back to your comments about the city learning from its mistakes. Your plan calls for adding patrols, instituting spot checks. Given the city's troubled history with its implementation of stop and frisk and the probable cause issues, what can you tell New Yorkers about how things are going to be different in terms of tactics on the street in 2022? Well,
you know, many of you who have covered me for a long time, like you, you know that this has been my life work. The abuse of police tactics will not return under my administration. And we are going to judge our commanders, our officers, our frontline supervisors on their ability to make sure we are not utilizing abusive tactics. And there are mechanisms that we're going to roll out on how we're going to ensure the quality assurance that we expect from our police officers. It's so important to have quality assurance. How do we know we're getting the product that we expect if we are not inspecting every day? You know what I say, if you don't inspect what you expect, it's all suspect.
Yes. To piggyback off of Jay's question, the public advocate is calling for a return of the residency requirement of police officers. The public advocate is calling for a residency requirement of police officers. Is that something you would consider?
Yes, I think that's a smart idea. We're wasting taxpayers' dollars. Many people don't know that a police officer is responsible for responding to crime 24 hours a day. There's no such thing as being off duty technically. If you see a crime and you don't take action as a police officer, you could be held accountable for that. So why are we using our tax dollars to pay for an officer to be here for 8 hours, and then 16 hours he's going to one of our 5 neighboring counties and protecting them? That makes no sense. No, I want you here in the city. I want you to go to the cleaners. I want you to go to the churches, the supermarket, your children to be in our schools. We shouldn't have 30-something% of officers residing out. You are paying for other counties to be safe. So I think he's right. We should have a residency requirement. We can grandfather it in. But there's something else we're going to roll out in the next week or so on how we can get the product right here in our city, to get those right here in our city to move in the police department. The commissioner's working on the details.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to circle back on the plainclothes units. You mentioned that they will be identifiable. So I'm wondering, doesn't that defeat the purpose? If they're in plain clothes, isn't there supposed to be an element of surprise? And then secondly, if they are going to be identifiable, exactly how are they going to be identified?
Great question. So right now, the real tool of being undercover lies in the vehicle. The current team now, they're in full uniform, but they're in an unmarked vehicle. And that unmarked vehicle allows them the element of surprise. If you're doing something inappropriate and you see that blue and white come down the block, it's almost a big hello, we're here. Now you need the blue and white because it presents something called omnipresence, and you want the feeling that the police is here. But this unit is going to be in an unmarked vehicle, and they're going to have some partial part of police clothing. The windbreaker jacket with NYPD on the back, like when the feds have federal FBI agents have FBI on the back, or other units. So they will be identifiable, not the way it was before when they were not identifiable at all. You don't know who's jumping out at the car at you, and that creates a lot of hostility.
One follow-up, if I may.
Yes.
On facial technology, facial recognition technology,
yes.
How exactly would that be used to combat gun violence?
Yes. The technology out there, the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and our team, we have been meeting with the new technology that's out there, and there's some amazing technology out there that will, someone in 8 seconds take a picture of your face, in 8 seconds see everything that you have in public view, not private view, but if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, no matter what, they can see and identify who you are without violating the rights of people, only looking at public data in a way it's going to be used for investigatory purposes, and that's what we're going to use it for. And there's technology out there that will tell you someone's carrying a gun. So we're looking at all of this technology out there to make sure that we can be responsible within our laws. We're not going to do anything that's going to go in contrast to our laws, but we're going to use this technology to make people safe.
Just following up on the question, Mr. Mayor, about funding, you said that the money was going to be repurposed by saving money within the city government. How much do you think that this plan needs, and can you give us a breakdown of how much are the policing initiatives and the mental health initiatives, and where is that funding coming from? Where is the savings that you've identified?
Well, I was looking at your favorite topic, Thrive NYC. I was looking at the numbers and where the numbers are going and what are we doing with it. And I believe the focus needs to be on the mental health crisis on the street. And so we're going to reconfigure some of those dollars, move them in another direction. I think some of the things we're going to do around the discretionary hires, that's within my span of control, not my unions. I've been clear, we're not furloughing unions. I think that how we're spending money, how we duplicate services, how we can merge units. Once we do our final analysis with my budget team and what I'm doing as well, we're going to identify the dollars to get folks on the ground in a real way.
Follow-up question about mental health.
Yes.
When you're responding to a mental health situation, how are you trying to ensure that people are actually not being hurt or lost? I'm referring to the shooting in Harlem. Technically, everybody does everything right, but people still die on both sides in the community, and also officers. How are you trying to do that better?
Which situation in Harlem are you talking about?
The 2 officers shot and the mother calling.
And you know what's interesting? We have, if a family member is saying, listen, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad need help, we have made it difficult for people to say that their loved ones need help. You know, we have said basically that you are there in a household with your loved one, and you should have the right to petition to get the help for your loved one. We need to really examine how we have restricted that in the city. And so by having mental health professionals partner, they should be the first line of responding to some of these conditions where a person does not knowingly has a weapon. They should be the first line of response. But you know, we need to be very careful, because you know, many people stated on the campaign trail that at no time should a police respond to a mental health job, and you saw what happened here, right? And so there must be a balance, using prior history, really talking to that person that's making that 911 call to find out some of the basic questions. And so there is a balance. You want to be as precautionary as possible to save the lives of the people who are making the call, as well as those who are responding. And there's no easy way to do it. Is, you know, the more trained we are, the better we are at ensuring we can save lives. But you know, before you answer that, we need to understand what we're talking about. This is what this guy had under his mattress. The number of rounds in here, he had a modified weapon, the weapon he was shooting, with 40 rounds in the clip. And he had this under his mattress. This is what's on our streets right now. In my beginning days of policing, I only was allowed to carry a .38 until an officer was shot trying to reload his 6-shooter, because everyone else was carrying automatic weapons and 9mm. But this is what police officers are up against. You know how many rounds that's in here? He could have emptied out his 40 and still had another automatic assault weapon for every responding officer that responded. That third officer in that house, I believe he saved the lives of the people in that house and the responding officers that were going to come when that 1013 was called. You saw the officers come through the door when that 1013 was called. If this guy had this and 40 rounds, something to think about.
Mr. Mayor, what is your specific ask for the president? I know you talked about bipartisan legislation, but is there anything that you want him to do via executive order, executive action right now? And my second question is about ghost guns. What specifically are you seeing with ghost guns? I know Philadelphia has seen 500, they've confiscated 500 ghost guns this year. It's a huge increase. What are you seeing here in the city?
Great question, great question. A couple of things we could do right away. Number one, we have different interpretation if a ghost gun is disassembled. So if someone gives you a ghost gun and it's in a box and it's disassembled, there's certain places where they're stating we don't consider that as a gun yet. We need to stop that. If you have all the pieces of a gun, you have a gun. And so we need to be very clear on the definition. We have to redefine the definition of a gun, because when we first defined the definition of a gun, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have 3D printers. So we have to constantly evolve, because the bad guys are evolving. And so on the federal level and the state level, we need to properly define a gun that includes the disassembling of a gun. The second, the Gun Violence Strategic Partnership. If you haven't, I believe all of you should go down and invest, see if they let you in. But right now, on the campaign trail, for those who were on the campaign trail, I talked about the lack of information sharing. We can do this if we are honest about doing it. When 9/11 happened, I saw an unprecedented mobilization from the city, state, and federal level where we said we would never be caught off guard again. Why haven't we done that for guns in the city? And so when I asked the president to do, when I met with him, is say, can you put together that same response? Can you tell the federal government, the FBI, the ATF, all of our apparatus to come together with the state and city? In August, they did that. And now we're going to enhance that. Right now, every day, they meet an unprecedented group of law enforcement people, DAs, parole, probation, FBI, New York City Police Department. They're all coming together and they are doing something revolutionary. They're sharing information.
Do you consent with the amount of involvement so far by the president?
I think the president has done an amazing job. I am pleased. He obviously sent the message down to the agencies that we will do this together. We have ignored this for far too long, and now we need to push through smart legislation to get this done. We need to pass the Build Back Better bill. We need to get the resources to the crisis management teams. That bill would allow us to do so, where we can put crisis management teams in every hotspot and every precinct, and we would get a good return on our investment.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned 400 people in the pipeline for this new plainclothes unit. What's going to be the total number of people that you envision being part of that? And then second question, what do you say to lawmakers in Albany who maybe might be convinced on the numbers that you would show them, but are fearful that anything that looks like a regression on criminal justice reform will invite a primary challenge?
That's a good question. The police commissioner is going to make the determination, and I am really pleased with her poise, what she showed over these last few days. She's going to make the final determination on how much we need to scale it up. We want to make sure we cover those 30 precincts where 80% of the violence is coming from. The two of us have been speaking, and she has put in place an amazing plan to do so. I just have an awesome amount of support for what she's doing and real trust for her. To those lawmakers that see they're going to have or feel they're going to have a primary challenge, those who covered this race, you heard the things they called me. I mean, they called me so many names. They wanted to just do away with my history of fighting for reform. They wanted to rewrite it. They wanted to do away with my history for public safety. They tweeted me, they Instagrammed me, they Facebook. They did all of those things to me. But on January 1st, 2022, I'm the mayor.
I wanted to get some more updates on the investigation. And can you say at this point what the motive was for the shooter on Friday night? Did he have some sort of an extremist view? Was he emotionally disturbed? Was it both? What can you say about that?
I don't know. The detectives are doing a thorough investigation to determine what happened here, and did anyone else play a role in this? And after their investigation, the commissioner will give a complete report on what happened. If you have extremist views, it's obvious you have mental health issues also. And so the police commissioner is going to come out. I think the goal is to get through this week. This was a devastating week. Sitting in that hospital, watching those mothers and, the family members of these officers, it was devastating. I couldn't help but to think about, Bernard, my brother, and I said the other day about Robert Venable. I still think about Robert. I keep a picture of Robert in my wallet. We were going away, we were on our way to take a trip together, and losing him in that way, I could only see the pain that these families are experiencing, and so. The commissioner will give a review of that, but we just want to get through this week.
The gun one more held up, Mr. Mayor. Do you know where he got that weapon from? Was it the other one was stolen? Do we know? It's the first time we're really seeing and learning about this weapon officially. Where did he get it? Any other information on it?
Great question. We know one of them were reported. One of the weapons was reported stolen. We're getting the background information on the second one. Here's what we do know. They were not manufactured in New York. We do know that. We have become the dumping ground for these types of weapons. And that is why our officers need help. They really need help. You know, they have been going on overdrive. In spite of everything and what they have gone through, they have stayed committed to keeping the city safe. And they should not have this. They should not be up against this. Just an announcement before I leave, LaShawn McNeil has passed away. He was a shooter from Friday night. My staff just notified me he passed away.
Officer, can you say any updates on the other officer's condition?
Right now is prayers. Prayers for the family, prayers for our city, that we can move in the right direction.
Anything you say to the mother of McNeil, who has also responded to this?
The 19th.
The mother of McNeil.
I have not visited him, but my heart goes out to any mother. While an active investigation is going on, I hope that we can.
Mr. Mayor,